Kevin Durant, clearly a once-in-a-generation talent. With a smooth handle and a ridiculously quick release for a person of his size, he has had an outstanding career by any metric. But while he is a deserving two-time Finals MVP, his career is also a sad case study in the detrimental effects of insecurity and a lack of belief in those around you can have. The main topic of this video is exactly that. What have other elite players who have had similar talent and skill as Kevin Durant done in a team setting to forge winning environments and cultures? Each one had a slightly different approach, but all of them worked in their own way on some level. Kevin came in with Russell Westbrook, Jeff Green, Serge Ibaka, and James Harden on a young Supersonics and eventually OKC Thunder team. If you look at the careers of Westbrook and Harden alone, that is a stacked team. But yes, at the time they were all together, they were all very young. Now let's look at other elite champions from modern times. MJ, LeBron, Kobe, Larry Bird, and Magic. The only ones who had great team success right away were Larry and Magic. Just look at Larry Bird's college career. He stayed loyal to one initial recruiter who had him to come to Indiana State. They had never even made the NCAA tournament before. They to this day are still the first team to ever make the NCAA tournament final in their first appearance. He only had one other teammate in Carl Nicks even make the NBA. He was just a culture changer and a leader from day one. He steps into a downtrodden Celtics team caught between trying to stay competitive and a quick rebuild, having gone 29-53 in 1979. He brings his mentality in and completely turns the team around, leading them to a 61-21 record. Now take Magic, who came in and also was dropped onto a team trying to do a one-year rebuild. He immediately set to work trying to figure out the best way to motivate and work with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was notoriously abrasive and aloof teammate.
How long did it take Kareem to adjust to what you were selling?
Yeah, it took him all season that first year. First of all, they thought I was coming in to take over the team, and I told them on first day of training camp, I said, listen, man, I'm here to help you. I said, what do you like the ball? He said, what? I said, what do you like the ball? I said, you like it high, you like it in the middle of your chest, you like it low. He said, no, I like it high. I said, that's where it'll be every single time. I said, I'm here to help you be more successful. So that first game, he hits a sky hook from the free throw line. Now, not from down low, from the free throw line to win the game in San Diego. So I go running, I jump, and I'm choking him and hugging him. And I didn't let go for about 2 or 3 minutes. Because I had never seen a shot like that, game winning shot like that.
He won over Jabbar immediately by letting him feel that he was still the leader and best player, and Magic stepped up when needed to show that he was actually the best player and leader, with an all-time rookie finals performance in Game 6. With Jabbar injured, Magic dropped 42-15-7 on the Sixers' heads, winning finals MVP. So Larry had an approach of tough love, work ethic, and extreme confidence while promoting a ball movement and assisting style. It clearly worked for him and the Celtics. Magic chose a similar on-court style of ball movement with an emphasis on the fast break, but he studied each teammate's mentality, behavior, and how they liked the ball, and he worked hard to massage egos and keep everyone's touches fair. His approach also clearly worked for him, with both players enjoying highly successful careers while staying with the team that drafted them for the duration. Now let's look at MJ, LeBron, and Kobe. MJ came into another disastrous team in the Chicago Bulls. Jerry Reinsdorf admits in The Last Dance that they were getting outdrawn at the time by the local indoor soccer team, the Chicago Sting. In comes Michael Jordan.
I just want the franchise and Chicago Bulls to be respected, like the Lakers or the Philadelphia 76ers or the Boston Celtics. Hopefully that this team and this organization can build a program like that.
Coming from North Carolina, he wasn't used to having to culture build himself. But slowly but surely he figured it out. His approach, as we know from The Last Dance, was forging toughness in his teammates through the gauntlet of competitive drive and constant pressure that he brought to practice. And of course, by often ridiculing them, which isn't an approach I agree with, but he at least was extremely direct with people face to face behind closed doors, and then defended them publicly to the media, which is essentially the opposite approach of many of today's players, whose favorite tactic is acting buddy-buddy but then leaking stories behind their back. LeBron came into a similarly dysfunctional situation in Cleveland, and his approach was simply to put his head down and play hard. I honestly loved young LeBron in Cleveland. He He was raw, but he played with a direct force that was really enjoyable to watch. But as his Cavs teams grew stronger and stronger, culminating in back-to-back first overall seed finishes in the league, we all saw his weaknesses and we waited for him to address them in the offseason like all-time greats. But instead, in my opinion, he got bad advice and started to think of his teams as pawns that can be moved around the board to support him, the king. I honestly don't think LeBron thought like that at first, but he was convinced, and now that mentality is firmly a part of his belief system. But we do have to acknowledge he's won 2 more championships than Kevin Durant. So what can we glean from LeBron's approach that worked? Pressure. From that last year in Cleveland until even today for the Lakers, throughout the season, he puts constant pressure on his teammates, the coaches, and especially the front office, using various strategies such as leaking stories, calling people behind the scenes. When that doesn't work, mercurial Twitter posts, and then finally interviews like the famous "We Top Heavy as a Bleep" interview. This strategy, in my opinion, is super short-sighted in that essentially the GM, the coach, and the role players know that if they don't play to your standard, they're getting shipped out. But it can work in the sense that everyone is extremely focused for a short time to give their best to not be put in your crosshairs. But it has backfired numerous times for LeBron in the long term, with teammates like Mo Williams, who LeBron leaked to the media wasn't a good enough co-star, or Dwayne Wade, who took a pay cut so that they could re-sign Bron before he left, or Russell Westbrook, who was convinced to come by LeBron before that relationship disintegrated, or Kyrie, who got sick of playing second fiddle and being asked questions about LeBron being his father figure. But nonetheless, LeBron's approach of applying immense pressure to the team worked in short stints. Lastly, Kobe, who got so frustrated with Shaq telling the media that Kobe couldn't win without him, was determined to get out of LA until Shaq was traded first. Kobe's approach the middle part of his career was essentially work so hard and be so psychotically committed that everyone else will follow suit to the point that he wouldn't have to associate or even talk with them outside of timeouts, and sometimes not even then. The ceiling of this approach was a 3-1 lead as a 7th seed over the 2-seeded Phoenix Suns, famously hitting a clutch floater to tie and then a walk-off fadeaway to win Game 5. But after media critiques of Kobe being too selfish in Games 5 and 6 started swirling, Kobe played facilitator in Game 7 to prove a point that his teammates were bums. I was thoroughly disappointed at the time with Kobe for this, because while a team of Kobe, Lamar, and mostly G League quality players was pretty disappointing from the front office, I feel he could have helped turn Lamar and a few of the young players into pretty good players, and probably finished off that upset if he took a different approach. But after years of frustration, he finally changed his approach after talking to MJ, and he started investing in his teammates, and immediately won 2 more championships. So Kobe's approach of standoffish excellence didn't work whatsoever, and his approach more aligning with MJ's of crazy intensity but tough love investment of your co-stars like Powell paid off. Now back to Kevin Durant. As a young player with rising co-stars in Russ and Harden, with great young role players in Ibaka and Jeff Green, they did have an outstanding team. Their shortfalls against the champion Lakers, Heat, and Spurs didn't really bother me. They were young, finding their way, and were improving each year in their maturity. Russ was a spiritual leader with how hard he played, but didn't have a culture setter of that detail-oriented excellence that the other legends we just talked about had. That was where Kevin was needed. He's had a pretty good understanding of the game throughout his career. He had the ability to be an elite end-of-game shot maker and closer, and lead the Thunder to a championship post-Miami Heat reign. The loss of Harden hurt, but the savings in money allowed them to really fill out the role players and supporting cast well, and they became elite defensively. But after going up 3-1 on the Warriors and honestly looking like the better team, when they had rough stretches in Games 5 and 6, Russ started pressing way too hard and tried to do it all himself. KD did nothing to stop him, often standing on the wing as Russ drove into the paint and forced a bad shot or turned it over. Instead of doing something about it, clearly being the best player on the floor, the first 4 games of the series, he just let it happen. After losing the series, he was understandably devastated. Russ can be extremely frustrating to play with, but he did seem content to let KD be the number 1 option most of the time, as long as KD was aggressive and took it. Instead of getting his teammates together in the offseason, he chose to leave Russ high and dry, eventually admitting privately that his lack of faith in Russ was what led him to choose Golden State. Everyone has their opinions about him choosing to join 73-9 Golden State, but to me, the real mistake was leaving OKC in general. The only thing missing from that team was leadership, and I think KD had it in him to do it. But once you make that mindset shift that you did all you could and others have been letting you down, it's a rabbit hole that's hard to get out of, and he's been deep down it ever since. After 2 championships with Golden State, he left with injuries and infighting with Draymond, who famously told KD, "We won before you got here, we don't need you," despite him being the one who cost the Warriors the championship by getting suspended the previous year and calling KD from the parking lot crying to recruit him. He chose to join up with close friend Kyrie Irving to forge a new path in Brooklyn. They were soon joined by James Harden. Once again, despite destroying Steve Nash's coaching career, I felt Kevin was close to becoming a solid leader, famously being a toenail away from the NBA Finals. But he couldn't help himself, handling Kyrie's stance on COVID and James Harden's anger over it poorly, and it disintegrated the team. He was then shipped to Phoenix, where they were immediately penciled in to be the championship next year with him and Devin Booker, Chris Paul, who was eventually shipped out for Bradley Beal. But they were only 4th in the West and lost in the second round. The next year, they had a slightly better record but got blown off the floor by Anthony Edwards and the Wolves in the first round. At this point, Kevin was fed up with his teammates despite handpicking the Phoenix Suns as his trade destination. All chemistry completely fell apart the next year, missing the playoffs despite him getting his usual averages. This, in my opinion, is one of the most stacked teams on paper to not make the playoffs of all time. Kevin, however, after hearing that he was being shopped, stated that he was tired of getting traded and lobbied to stay. But he saw the writing was on the wall and he accepted a trade to Houston. There, his veteran presence trading out for the talented but inexperienced Jalen Green, who had a terrible first-round series the previous year, led to many viewing Houston as the primary challenger to OKC in the West coming into this year. But given another chance to use leadership to take an elite team over the top for the 3rd time in his career, he sadly went another route. Watching the games from last year, Houston did have a somewhat ISO-driven, not much fun to watch offense, with Şengün being a great Jokic-light distributor from the high post. But they appeared to have great team chemistry with Dillon Brooks leading the way. But Kevin, used to at this point having proven veteran co-stars, made no effort to take them under his wing, instead focusing on putting up his usual efficient 25 points and at night sitting in his room resisting the urge to fire up the old burner accounts on Twitter. After a particularly rough stretch mid-season, he couldn't take it anymore and he logged in, firing off multiple tweets criticizing the basketball IQ and mental makeup of several of his teammates. Twitter sleuths once again narrowed down the evidence pointing to Kevin. And while this interview did little to deny it, it didn't really matter if he did or didn't at this point because the damage was done.
There was allegations of the All-Star you used a burner account to disparage current and former teammates. The handle for the burner was @GetHigher77. Is that your account? Did you send the messages to that?
I know you gotta ask these questions, but I'm not here to get into Twitter nonsense. I'm just here to focus on the season, keep it pushing. But I know I get you got to answer those questions.
The Rockets' chemistry has looked terrible the last few months and has looked even worse in the playoffs. Kevin has regularly drawn double teams and just chucked the ball to random places. Sure, his teammates should be moving and cutting, but at this point, they're used to just watching him play ISO. And the sad downward trajectory of Kevin Durant's ridiculous potential to win 4 to 6 championships in his career if he showed a bit more leadership continued. And I fully expect the Rockets to disintegrate next year until he leaves, regardless of whether they come back in this series or not. I always hear people say about all-time great players, well, MJ had a great coach in Phil and sidekicks in Pippen and Rodman. Kobe got carried by Shaq. Magic Johnson had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, and Pat Riley. Larry Bird had Red Auerbach as his executive and Mikhail Parrish and Dennis Johnson. The same people say, who did LeBron, KD, and James Harden have? They had no help early in their careers, so that's why they had to leave teams. Guys, you're missing the point. Guys like MJ, Larry, Kobe, Magic, they were forces of will. It didn't matter if they had a trash front office, an average coach, or average teammates. They would find who around them had potential and they would force them to become elite by their drive and competitive nature. If Jordan didn't have Pippen, it would have just been someone else he would have hounded in practice. Rodman was on the verge of being out of the league until Jordan took him in. These guys took the people around them and the culture around them and elevated them to their level. Even Kobe, who was so pissed off about the narrative that he couldn't win without Shaq, went the other direction for several years. Eschewing culture building by being an asshole, determined to limit test if he could carry a team without really putting in any effort to lead or elevate them at all. But the beauty of Kobe is, when it didn't work, he consulted MJ and he reminded him that he only won after he invested all his energy into developing Scottie and Phil. Kobe went from demanding a trade to learning from MJ and completely buying into Gasol, Bynum, and Odom, and he went on to win 2 more championships. When you truly buy into something instead of constantly pointing out the flaws and letdowns of those around you, that's when your team can really take off. Let's not glaze over the fact that MJ and Kobe could be intimidating assholes, and Magic and Larry did have some really good teammates, but they clearly changed the culture around them wherever they went with the standard they set behind the scenes. If you're in a situation as a player or coach or even at work where you feel your mind is starting to view your teammates, players, and coworkers as low IQ idiots who are letting you down, try taking a long, hard look in the mirror if you're fully investing in them to manifest greatness, or if you're on Twitter burner accounts destroying their confidence. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate all the support, and shout out the Real Mind Crime and those of you supporting from there as well. Love you guys. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you can actually see the videos when I upload. Don't rely on the algorithm to send it to you. Please consider supporting as a member as well, where you can suggest future topics. Much love. Peace.
There are very, very few people that I've ever known who had a drive in them like Michael had. And Michael also was, the arrogance that he carried with him was a plus, because he knew that he could do things that other people couldn't do. It was a difference between us, but I will say one thing for Michael Jordan, to this day and ever, he never came to me and asked for other players. He never came to me and asked me to draft a player. He never came to me and asked me to trade for a player. Never once did that happen. Part of it was he thought he was so darn good he could win without him. I'm sure of that, he'd say that.